Yes, sir. For Senate Appropriations, September 2nd, 2022. Senator Guru,
Excused.
Senator Hicks, Senator Kinsky,
Excused.
Senator Steinmetz, Chairman Perkins.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, first bill for our consideration this afternoon is House Bill 63. So, Chairman Guerrero, excuse me, Guerrero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as you may or may not know, Wyoming Constitution Article 1, which was then later amended, and it's in Article 3, requires the legislature to set salaries for county officers. One in particular would be our county attorneys. So, as the members of Appropriations realize, we pay the state. When I say we, the state pays a portion of those salaries. So what this bill does is increases the cap or the discretion for the county commissioners to raise the salary for their county attorneys, but it still limits the state's share to the lesser of 50% of the salary or 50,000. The cap right now is at $100,000. So this was brought to me really in response to the rising costs of living in quite a few counties around the state. The fact that there are county attorneys' offices where the deputies are making more than the elected officer in particular. And so with respect to the county attorneys, what this is doing is giving, without additional cost to the state, is giving that discretion to the counties, through the county commissioners, to go ahead and make that decision. Teton County is a classic example. But it's not the only county. There are many others out there. My county pays below the current cap, and I doubt will pay more than the cap. So it's just up where you live and what the counties are. As the bill was drafted, I tied it to, which is sort of an axiom of that prosecuting attorney, the head prosecuting attorney in the county should make the same amount or comparable to the judicial officer in which they're appearing. So I tied it to the district court judge where felonies are heard. In the House moved that down to the salary. The cap would be tied to the circuit courts. So 160, I believe, was the circuit court salary. It's 145 for circuit courts. So that's that on the county attorney. So in doing this as well, and we had this in front of, and I asked for it to go in front of the House Appropriations Committee. It was a discussion regarding the district attorneys. So the DAs in basically the two counties, Laramie County and Natrona County. And the language that you'll see in there is the same cap on that. As it was originally drafted, and probably a really poor job of review on me, it instantly gave them a raise. That was not my intention. My intention was to have it go through the appropriation process, because you appropriate to the DAs much like you do an agency. So the changes, as you'll see in the engrossed copy, is that the cap is moved the same to 145, but subject to, and it'll be as determined by the legislature, meaning the appropriation process. So that's the bill, probably over-explained it.
Okay, thank you. Is any, I was thinking, going by memory, which is never a good thing. The circuit court judges were like 135, districts were 150, and Supreme Court was 165, but I could be wrong.
I think Senator Hicks is right. And I think I had to prove Chairman Nicholas wrong. It was 160 for the district court judges.
Districts, okay.
And then 145 for the circuit court judges.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I didn't look at the Supreme Court, actually.
I should know better. I ran that bill a couple of years ago. Anyway, okay, thank you. Any questions for Chairman Nicholas? Excuse me. Sorry, I didn't mean to insult you, Chairman Guerrero. Any questions for Chairman Guerrero? Fair enough. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time today, Chairman. Is there anyone else, or we have any other agency or don't see any other legislators in here. All right, so let's go to the next one. Is there any public hearing, anybody who wishes to speak on House Bill 63, County and District Attorney Salary Amendments? Chairman Willicks, or excuse me, Commissioner Willicks, or whichever one you are today. You work several different hats. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Willicks, President of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association,
Okay.
here with you today. Just to express our support for this bill. Again, by resolution, each county commissioners have to set salaries here in the next couple of months for the next 4 years. And as the sponsor pointed out, in many counties, there is a disparity between the deputies and the county attorney. We want to make sure we can attract qualified candidates in those counties where there's a disparity. The good news is with the cap, I can vouch that there are several attorneys below the cap and some at the cap. Again, gives us an option, but does not increase the state's obligation, which I think is a key point of this. It just lets the county commissioners, as part of that resolution process, set a salary that's commensurate with the market that they're existing in. And there's no doubt that metropolitan areas versus rural areas face different market pressures. And we just want to make sure we attract qualified candidates. So we would urge your support, and I would be glad to answer any questions.
I do have a question. As the Chief Budget Officer, looking at line 11 on page 3 and line 9 on page 2. So page 2, the question has to do with district attorneys, which probably don't, kind of like you really would. But anyway, we have from and after January 2nd of 2023. And then on line 11 on page 3, we've got from and after January 1st of 2023. I was just wondering why there's a 1 day difference in those dates. I think it's obviously intended to come after the next election, but I don't know why was there a particular reason there's a difference in those dates?
Mr. Chairman, my guess would be the district attorneys are on a calendar year, whereas your county attorneys get sworn in at a different date. Could that be the difference? I'm taking an uneducated guess.
Okay.
But the county attorneys would start on the day of swearing in, and that moves based on the calendar.
So Chairman Greer, do you know if are those dates okay, or should they be the same, or do you have any idea?
You know, Mr. Chairman, that's why we take this through a whole bunch of rounds, is I never looked at that. Or can I give you an explanation of why those are different?
We'll check with staff and just see if there's a reason. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for President Willicks? All right, thank you. Any other public comment on House Bill 63? Any other comment on House Bill 63? Fair enough. All right, we'll close off. Is there anybody in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, while we have Chairman Greer here, I do have a question. I'm just real quick trying to read through here. So on page 2, we use circuit court judges as the cap on that. And that's for district attorneys' salaries. And then when we go over to page 3, now we're dealing with county attorneys and prosecuting attorneys, and we use district court salaries for that. Or am I reading that wrong? No, I see. Okay. Never mind. I'm good. Got it.
All right, thank you. It's always great when you can answer your own question.
All right.
If we wander in the dark long enough, we can figure.
I don't have my glasses with me, Mr. Chairman, so I'm
I've been there, done
squinting.
that. Did you have something, Senator?
We have the Sweetwater County and prosecuting attorney on Zoom that wanted to
Okay,
address the committee.
and behold, there he is. Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dan Aramosby. I am the Sweetwater County Attorney. I also represent Wyoming on the Board of Directors for the National District Attorneys Association. And I appreciate Representative Greer sponsoring this bill. I'll be brief. I know you had a long session before coming in here, and I don't want to delay your lunch any further, but a couple things I'd point out that this is fixing a problem within the county attorney's offices across the state, actually even really across the nation. We're having difficult time filling positions of deputies and holding them in those positions. And in order to fix that problem, we have to become more competitive with the market. This morning, there were 46 openings on the Wyoming Bar website, job openings. 6 of those for county attorneys. We can't compete with the salaries that are being offered by the private market, by the feds, even the public defender's office. Just as in the last 18 months, I've lost 3 deputies, 2 to greener pastures out of state, and 1 took a public defender contract in private practice, which will make his life a little bit more lucrative, at least his income. This really isn't about having the county attorneys making more money. It really is about providing quality to the people of the county. In fact, you could even say it's against our self-interest to have more people run against us by having a higher wage and drawing more candidates in. But by having more candidates running against us, we are providing a better product to the voter. And I think that's really kind of what it's all about. This provides the discretion for the county to use the county coffers how they see fit. It doesn't take anything away from the state, with the exception of the DAs, but even then the appropriation gets to decide on what they get paid. But this allows the county to decide what the county wants to do. And in all reality, I think that the best use of and the best decisions of money being spent, the people's money being spent, is at the elected officials closer to the voters. So trust your commissioners, and in a sense, you're trusting the voters who put those commissioners in office. I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth by saying, by following up with the amended version of this bill ties us down to circuit court. The National District Attorneys Association and the National Criminal Justice Standards have put the district attorney salary or the county attorney salary in line with the district court judges, because we have great discretion and our discretion has impact. I don't think we have to look farther than the last 5 or so years on the national headlines to see what a bad prosecutor can do to a community, do to a nation even. So we need to bring qualified people in. If this bill goes through as amended under circuit court, it will help. It will help some counties some of the time. If it was at the district court level, I believe it would help all the counties all the time. And I don't think it would have to be addressed ever more. But we're happy that something is getting moving, and I hope that it goes through and helps the counties to be able to draw those candidates and and to be able to keep the people that are experienced and are knowledgeable in office. And thank you very much, and I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate your service and your time today. Dan, any questions for this good public servant? There don't appear to be any, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did want to go back, Chairman Greer, just a quick question that was raised. When I look at this, at the top of page 3, it says full-time county attorneys and full-time county and prosecuting attorneys. And so that is the individual holding that particular office, and is it meant to be inclusive or exclusive of the full-time attorneys that are assistant county attorneys or assistant county and prosecuting attorneys?
Mr. Chairman, it's exclusive within the statute. I've got it in front of me, but then it just goes on to allow the county commissioners to pay the other folks something that's equivalent to, that's commensurate with the quality or the type of work that they're doing. So it gives them freedom to pay the deputies more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see that a lot, don't we? The one other question I had, I'd just be interested about if the discussion in your house with respect to circuit court versus district court. I know on some of these salary increase bills, you win the battle and lose the war. You end up, you fight to get it back to district court level, and then you lose the whole entire bill because of that. I just wondering if you could enlighten us, at least some thoughts that you heard from the House about with respect to that particular change.
Yeah, and I guess, Mr. Chairman, when I presented it, I presented this in a way of, I had a reason why I put the district court in there. And I presented it in a way of this gets something done, because this is necessary for quite a few counties around the state. One of the issues I had was that I had an instant raise for the district, for the DAs. And so when the House Appropriations Committee worked it. They fixed that problem, which I was glad they did. And they had a discussion and so we're going to lower this down to the circuit court judge. I thought that was fine. It allowed it to carry through the House. There was an attempt to take it down to 90% on an amendment that was soundly defeated. If the Senate were to raise it to the circuit court, which to the district court, I would believe that would be appropriate for the reasons have been stated. I think, Mr. Chairman, you and I have bought and sold enough horses to know that it ends up being like 90% of the circuit court or the district court judge level in the end. So whatever you feel is appropriate.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other questions? Any other public comment anywhere, Karen? Anybody else? All right. We'll close off public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or any amendments? Any discussion or any amendments? There being none, we'll check with staff on the dates and let's go ahead and call the roll.
Yes, sir. On House Bill 63, Senator Carew,
Aye.
Senator Hicks,
Aye.
Senator Kinski,
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz, Chairman Perkins,
Aye.
5 aye.
Who's supposed to carry this in the Senate? Was it
One of the
me?
most esteemed co-sponsors on there.
Oh, that would be Senator Driscoll.
Okay.
Okay, I think you meant me. Okay, I think I
Mr. Chairman.
agreed to do that. I remember our past conversation. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. So next one is House Bill 107, Water State Revolving Funds. This is from, we have, welcome, Representative Simpson. Glad to have you here today. Go ahead. If you want to bring us through the
Thank
bill,
you,
we're on a white copy. Is that correct?
Mr.
We're on the original House bill. It didn't change.
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead, Representative Simpson. Excuse me,
Thank you.
Chairman. You're Chairman of the Select Water, so let's call you Chairman today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members. In January, the agencies that work with the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund and the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund approached me as the chairman. And what's happening is the new federal monies that are being folded down to them as they've looked over our current statutes that have not been changed in over 30 years associated with these programs. They're not very conducive to receiving this money. There's some challenges there. And so the agencies have asked me as a committee chairman to integrate it into our program with the Select Water Committee. But unfortunately, the request came too late and our committee meetings had ended by then. So they asked me to sponsor this personally. And so I brought on some of my colleagues from the Select Water Committee. So here's what we have, folks. As you understand the SRF program, the federal money just doesn't flow to us. We actually apply for it, federal capitalization grant. And currently we're only applying every other year because we simply don't have enough matching money. So when we apply, we have to put 20% up and then they provide the 80% and it comes back into the program. Let's take the drinking water program, for example. So 10% is taken from the water development account number 1, and 10% is taken from the MRG. That provides 20%, but those funds are relatively limited. And as these new federal funds are coming down from the infrastructure bill, we just simply don't have an ability to match those. What's interesting is we do have a situation where we have a lot of money out on loans. Half the state owes us money that they're repaying in, but our statutes don't allow us to utilize that money as the matching. And so the federal government has worked with us and they've suggested a way that we can do that, whereby we use MRG money to float into the 20%. And then when it comes down into our possession, we reimburse the MRG program and replace it with the interest money that we're gaining off of our previous projects. And so It's just a matter of managing our money in the accounts. So that's what this bill does. There's a few other tweaks in the bill, and you've had a chance to review those. And if you want me to go into more depth, Mr. Chairman, I certainly could. We have the three agencies here with us. If you want to really dive deep in, I'd invite them to come forward and to share the intricacies about the challenges they're running into.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson. Any questions for Chairman Simpson?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Senator Kinsky.
I'm curious on page 3, where you tap the mineral royalty, the MRG. That fund isn't always as full as we'd like it to be, is it? Is there some more reliable source of, you have to wait for that thing to fill up? I don't know how much is in it now, but not as much as it's been in it historically, is my understanding. And I wonder if that fund is going to be your most reliable partner for the objective you're trying to achieve, which I understand.
Mr. Chairman, we've analyzed that, and I'd like to turn the time over to Beth to be able to elaborate on her findings.
Okay.
We always like to phone a friend in our committee. So go ahead, Beth. Go ahead.
My name is
Welcome.
Beth Blackwell. I'm the Grants and Loans Manager for the Office of State Lands and Investments. What we've analyzed with this is what we project to do is the MRG pot would not be the only pot that we would be taking funds from. It's also the corrective action account.
And
These-
if I can ask you a question about this, this is the same corrective action account that we use for the lust funds and all the underground water. That's all that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And does this allow, then this gets paid in there, but does this make the entire corrective action account available to use this, or if you understand my question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I believe this bill and some of the changes that were done to the corrective action account statutes limit the funds that we can get from there to their available cash as well as their accounts receivable.
And so, right, and then my concern is not that we're using the corrective action account. That corrective action account has some other purposes, and I want to make sure that those purposes don't get pirated or hijacked with respect to this. So Director, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hang
Todd
on one
Parfit.
sec. Oh, did you
Well,
want to put a
you're
finer
leaving me
point
in the
on that?
dust. What is a corrective action account?
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Todd Parfit, Director of the Department of Environmental Quality. And to Senator Kinsky's question, so what is the corrective action account? It's funded with the equivalent of a 1 cent per gallon fuel tax from the mineral severance tax distribution. And it amounts to about $10 million a year that goes into the corrective action account from that distribution. And it's paid out in 4 installments throughout the year. So what does it pay for? It pays for remediation of leaking underground storage tanks. That's what its original intent was back in 1990. And then we added in 2015 the ability to pay for landfill remediation projects. We had an outstanding liability there of roughly 300 million. And so we were able to, according to the way the statute reads now, if funds are available, we can use that for landfill remediation. And then for it also in 2018 was modified to incorporate orphan sites, and orphan sites are contaminated sites where there's no responsible party. We have about $10 million worth of work associated with orphan sites that could be used, utilize the corrective action account. So does that change? Does this bill change that? No, it doesn't. What it does is it allows the department through a corrective action account. We have to match 20% of the capitalization grant that comes from EPA for SRF. And that comes from the corrective action account currently. The difference is it would still come from the corrective action account, but it would be on a loan, a short-term loan to OSLI to make that matching contribution for the grant. And then that would be paid back to the corrective action account by OSLI within a day or a few days out of the investment, the interest and investment income in the SRF accounts from OSLI.
All right, thank you. Did you get it? Okay. So everybody just gonna, it's in the, this is just a holding mechanism. You'll keep track of all this money inside there and use it for the purposes which was placed in there. Right?
That's correct.
Okay. So do you have anything else for us, Director?
Not at the moment, but I'm just here for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Director of DEQ?
So then let's back it up a little bit. So we have to have our 20% in hand before the feds are going to flow more SRF money to us. That's the catch.
We'll go to the grant writer. Go ahead, Beth.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kinsky, we can only apply for the amount of capitalization grant for the amount of federal dollars that we have state dollars to match. So when we apply for those funds, we have to identify that we have those funds to match available. Historically, those funds are drawn down as we pay out to the borrowers as they are doing projects and they're submitting reimbursement requests. We're pulling down those federal funds from ASAP, their network. And at the same time, when we're doing that, we have a spreadsheet that tells us, okay, you need this much federal funds, this much state funds. So we would pull the federal funds down and the state funds would come out of the state match account. And that's how we would pay for it. So the federal funds stay with the feds until we request them.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So I presume there's some upper limit on how much SRF we can get out of the feds, or is the sky the limit?
Go ahead, Beth.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kinsky, there's a formula, an allocation formula within each of the different SRF programs. And within clean water, we receive less than 0.5% of the total cap grant that goes to the whole country. Whereas in drinking water, we're considered a 1% state. That's the least amount that any state gets. So we get 1% of the overall cap grant is
Okay.
what we're
Mr. Chairman,
allowed to
okay.
apply for.
So my question is, theoretically, if there's the max we could borrow, but what's the gap? We're actually borrowing this much because we don't have enough 20%. What's that gap?
So I can tell you clean water, based on what we have historically received. The last three cap grants, including the state and the federal portion, were $9.3 million and some change. What is expected to be for our next regular cap grant through clean water, that cap grant is expected to be 11.5 from the feds and 2.3 from us. That's your regular capitalization grant. Within the infrastructure bill, they provided additional funds. So there's an additional pot of money within both clean water and drinking water that is just an additional pot of money that goes to traditional SRF projects. And so for clean water, the first year of that additional pot of money is $9.1 million federally. And that first 2 years of that additional pot, the state only has to match 10% within that additional funds. We have talked with EPA. There's no requirement that we have to take the regular cap grant in order to take the additional funds that require a lesser amount of match requirements. Also included in the infrastructure bill was a special emerging contaminants pot, both in the clean water and drinking water side. That pot of money is a total over 5 years of 4.7 million, almost $4.8 million. It does not require any state match. Within drinking water, they also provided a lead line replacement pot. So that pot of money also does not require any match funding. So the lead line replacement amount that is coming to the state is approximately 149 million. And that-
149 million?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
29.85 million per year for 5 years
For lead and water lines.
for addressing lead water line replacements. And that pot of money is specific, very specific as But what we've learned is, and what we're doing currently, our intended use plan is open. You have to be on the intended use plan to qualify for these. So we have asked projects, if you have an overall project, a big project that includes some lead lines, put that lead line portion of that project on the intended use plan separately, because what we know right now is we're gonna have to track these different pots of money separately. However, they can work together in a project. So it's gonna be a big puzzle of how we get these pieces matched together. So for instance, between the drinking water, regular cap grant and the additional pot of funds, the two that require a match within drinking water over the 5-year period that was reauthorized in the infrastructure bill, we would receive a total loan funds of $312 million. That would be 80% state or 80% federal, 20% state. With that,
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, that was over a 5-year period.
yes, sir.
And that's the total 312. Or
That's
is that just the federal 80%?
that is the total of all of our
Yeah.
funds. So the federal portion would be 200 and it'd be approximately $50 million less than that. Because our match requirement for that would be 48 million. So if we put in $48 million as a whole, with those funds and including the federal funds, we're gonna have $311 million or $312 million to loan out over 5 years out of those two pots of money. That would require a match from the state of $48 million approximately. In return, we get $126 million in principal forgiveness with those funds.
How much?
$126 million. That means that we are passing through to the Wyoming communities at zero cost to them, approximately $77.5 million.
In grant.
Correct. That would be the principal forgiveness above what the state invested in their match funds. That's for drinking water. Within clean water, it's a little different. The total funds for loans would be $150 million. Our match requirement within this is only $23.3 million. We would receive a total of $55.7 million in principal forgiveness, which would be a pass-through of zero cost to communities of $32.3 million.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Senator Kinsky.
under the current, before all this torrent of money, was there ever a time when these revolving funds, drinking water, what's the other one? Drinking water, and what's the other one?
Clean water.
Clean water, where there's some portion of SRF that just went unclaimed, that you weren't getting enough applications or demand from communities for it?
Go ahead.
Chairman, Senator Kinsky, historically, the SRF pot of money is kind of the last resort for people because the state has had so much grant funds available.
Right.
So when we have plenty of principal forgiveness, our programs are busy. People will come and use them when there's principal forgiveness, whereas when we don't have principal forgiveness, the utilization goes down. I think currently the utilization of these programs have decreased in the last, say, 18 months, 2 years, because people were unsure about the economy, but then they knew of all this potential federal funds coming in. And so repeatedly, we get people asking questions on this. And so as a SRF staff, we have worked for the last year, 18 months to try to analyze what's coming our way and figuring out how best the state can utilize that. And that's where some of these statute changes came about, is if we want to take advantage of all these federal funds, we needed to find another source of match funding.
Mr. Chairman, is this going to be enough? I mean, between the corrective action fund and the MRG, is that going to be enough to pull down as much as we possibly could?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kinsky, I think time will tell because through the two programs and through ARPA, we're going to have approximately, you could say, we've estimated $1 billion to do infrastructure projects in the state. And do we have $1 billion of infrastructure? Probably, but we're going to run into the same problems that everyone else is and that we historically have run into within the state is we've got limited contractors, we've got limited workers. Now there's a supply chain issue. So we as a program have just been trying to work together to make this program better and make it work better for the communities to make these projects eligible and affordable for these communities. Because regardless of how small they are, they're expensive projects. And if you have a small population, no matter how high your rates are, you're going to have a problem getting these loans and being able to repay them. So with some of these extra pots of money, the additional pot of money for both programs, 49% of that pot of money can be given at 100% principal forgiveness. So
Of the 1 billion,
excuse me,
of the 1 billion.
of the pot that we receive. So the additional allotment, which equals from the feds, 56 million in clean water and approximately 117 million in drinking water.
Mr. Chairman. So a city or a town received, if my community received a direct ARPA grant, can they use that as part of their match?
SRF doesn't require a match. They can fund 100% of their project through SRF from cradle to grave. We can do all the planning. We can do all of that stuff.
Right.
The one thing SRF can't do is pay for certain legal fees and things like that, but that's federal regulation.
So all the stuff that you just said, can you give us a little bullet point to walk us through that? Just send it to us.
Yes, sir.
All the stuff on the different acts and infrastructure. We've been looking for that information as we go forward. We're way beyond the scope of this bill right now, but anyway, that would be very helpful, I think.
I would be happy and I can share the spreadsheets that we have so you can see the dollar amounts
Would
as well.
appreciate it. Thanks very much.
So, Mr. Chairman, how much
Go ahead.
of it historically, when people have used either SRF or clean water, have also used RUS, so USDA programs for similar type of infrastructure. Are they eligible to participate in both programs?
Mr.
And
Chair.
if you can you help me out? Because I sort of get lost in the acronym salad. So
Yes,
Are you?
so
Utilities.
perfect. The SRF programs, both clean water and drinking water, we like to say play well in the sandbox with everyone. We can fund, we have funded, had joint funding with USDA currently, the big project that is happening in Lusk. We are joint funding with USDA. We have
Oh, and
worked,
Mr. Chairman, so when you say we are cooperating, is that drinking water? Safe? So which program are we matching with RUS and USDA?
so for Lusk, that's a great project to ask that for. They currently have USDA funds, SRF drinking water, as well as clean water. They also have taken out a loan from our office through the Capital Construction Loan Program. What that project is doing is digging up the whole road, replacing their water, sewer, all of their streets, curbs and gutters. And SRF can only pay for the footprint where water and sewer were to replace the road surface. So they took out that capital construction loan so that they could do the curbs and the gutters and all the stuff that SRF won't cover. So SRF probably works on 1 or 2 projects with USDA a year. We regularly work with MRG funds as well as water development funds. Those are generally the big matchers, but a lot of times people just come in and ask for 100% of the project costs through the program, especially if there's principal forgiveness available. It's just one source it's easier to manage.
So with Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming some of those funds, they also pay for the engineering.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, correct. There is, within our statute, there is a limit of 20% on engineering, and all projects come in with a 20% engineering. Whether it's a loan or a grant.
Amazing how that works.
Yes, sir, it is.
My guess is they come in at 19.8% of the project.
Well,
My experience.
and then they have that
Sequence up.
cushion, you know.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for all the information and our efforts to play Stump the Chump today. So anyway, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any other questions for this witness on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, but it would be helpful to get these numbers from you. for each
Yes.
One of the programs.
Absolutely.
And email that to the committee. So when we present this on the floor, we have that.
Present that on the floor and it'll help us as we move forward into the infrastructure bill and the interim and some things like that as we get ready for that. Okay, any other questions for these folks? All right. Thanks so much. Is there any other agencies or speak on this? Please come up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Beth Calloway, Governor Gordon's Water and Natural Resources Policy Advisor, and I just will be very brief and express our support for this bill. As was previously mentioned, this is the brainchild of the work of all three agencies that manage SRF programs. And so it's the result of a bunch of bright minds coming together to come up with a solution to help assist local communities to better take advantage of these funds. In the governor's view, this is very important to be able to allow that to happen, as well as to provide valuable return on investment for these programs. So in short, I just wanted to express our office's support for this bill.
All right, thank you. So thank you for all the the cooperative agreement between the agencies.
Thank you,
No,
Mr. Chairman.
it's great, we're small and we ought to work together like that. So thanks for all that. Appreciate that. Any other government agency, anyone else to speak on this bill? Is there anyone open for public comment? Is there anybody speak on this bill? Anybody speak on this bill? Is there anybody in the room, Karen?
Mr. Chairman, we do have one, the interim director for Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts,
Okay, go ahead and admit him or her.
and that's Kathy Rosenthal. If you'll go ahead and use your camera and mic, the committee is prepared to hear from you.
You're still on mute, I think, Ms. Rosenthal.
There we are. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the members of the committee. My name is Kathy Rosenthal. I'm the interim executive director with the Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts, as well as the watershed coordinator for the Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts. On behalf of the Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts, we are in support of this bill and the amendments proposed with it, particularly in the form of item 6 on page 4, line 6, with the grants and other forms of financial assistance. This could potentially open other avenues of funding for entities such as the 34 local conservation districts that typically couldn't sponsor or utilize these kinds of funds because of the loan program. The conservation districts work with landowners and partners, including federal, state, and local municipalities on a myriad of clean and safe drinking water related projects. We feel that these revisions could allow for more implementation to occur at the local level to address point and non-point source pollution. And therefore, we are very much in support of this bill and hope to see it move forward. And with that, I would take any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Any questions for Ms. Rosenthal? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Anybody, any other public comment? Any other public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and close off public comment.
Move the bill.
Bill's been moved. Got a second by Senator
All right, on House Bill 0107, Senator Guru,
Aye.
Senator Hicks,
Aye.
Senator Kinsky,
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz, Chairman Perkins,
Aye.
5
Thank you. So Senator Hicks, who's the floor manager on this? You are? You got it? All right, thank you. All right, I think we've got. So Karen, we were also going to take up, I don't know if you missed the answer, we're going to take our re-referrals. Did you miss that? You did miss that? What, so we've got on the re-referrals, who's here for, is anybody here for a re-referral today? Yeah, please, let's do, we might be able to get
Good
one or
time.
more of these done.
Good time.
2:30, yeah, let's go ahead and get some
When
of
you go to
these.
the dentist,
Sure, go ahead.
right?
Huh?
When you go to the dentist. 2:30. You gotta have third grader jokes. You gotta have third grader jokes.
Shake this up.
You know, when you're mayor in a small town, they bring those school classes by.
Yeah.
See if I'm alive. Do you want to go on that, that findings amendment with me?
Sure. Sure, it's I applaud you for the effort because I think if the more specific you get, the better.
Yeah. Ogden wants to go on too, so that'll be helpful. And I think we need to have. There's always somebody aggrieved somewhere. So I got rights.
two aspects. One is so this is House Bill 29, Hathaway Scholarship Amendments. It comes from the interim work of the Joint Education Committee. It does four kind of big picture things. The first is it combines the Hathaway Reserve Account and the Hathaway Expenditure Account into a single account. And I think some of your members sit on capital, select me on capital finance investments. If you recall, at the end of each fiscal year, the expenditure account is zeroed out and put into the reserve account. And then in the fall, Hathaway expenditure account relies on the reserve account to cash flow the expenditure account to pay. So the timing's off. So the Joint Education Committee said, let's eliminate the left pocket to right pocket back to the left pocket and just combine the into a single account, the expenditure account. The expenditure account collects the investment earnings, but the timing of the investment earnings, you don't get the investment earnings up front. And so that's why the cash flow from the reserve account is necessary. Mr. Chairman, it comes periodically. It depends, interest and dividends, is dispersed periodically throughout the fiscal year. Realized capital gains are usually after the fiscal year or at the end of the fiscal year. So that's the first big idea in this bill, is that that's the first big idea, is just fix the timing by combining the accounts rather than emptying the expenditure account at the end of the fiscal year and then cash flowing from the reserve account. It just eliminates that left pocket to right pocket. So the second change with the expenditure account or the reserve account is the maximum amount right now that the reserve account can retain in its balance is 4.5% of the 5-year market average. This bill increases that to 9%. So basically, Mr. Chairman, it's $26 million, which is about a year and a half of total scholarship awards. Now, interest in dividends is about 2.3% to 2.7% over this next forecast period, which is about $15 to $16 million per year. So in reality, the differential between the yield and scholarship payments ranges from about $1 million to $500,000 of surplus. So your reserve account can really cash flow it for quite a few years. But the 9% allows it to cash flow a little bit much longer. Now, the other change kind of from a capital financing investments standpoint is with the increased 9%, you have a lost opportunity cost. So the expenditure account, the combined account, can be invested in pool A as determined by the state treasurer's office. It doesn't. And right now, Mr. Chairman, the reserve account is invested in the state agency pool, which is earning far less than what pool A would yield. So that's the first big concept of this bill, is kind of combining the accounts, increasing the cap from 4.5%, the 5-year market average, to 9%, and then allowing the combined account to be invested in pool A.
Right, which will decrease the opportunity cost, but then there's still another issue, and I think this is probably your third issue.
Well, so I don't know, maybe you can.
Well, and so at the end of the day, if you combine the accounts, there has been, and the accounts now at 700, a little over, I don't know what it is today. Markets haven't been good, but here just not very long ago was over $700 million in the account value with the underlying investment. The corpus, if you will, was about a little over $700 million. What does this do? And it's significant. In fact, I think all of the accumulation of that, since it was, I think, 500 million originally, has been through tips, where the reserve account filled it up enough that it tipped once it got the level and it tipped over, and that's how that account has grown. And the extent it's inflation proof, it's been through that mechanism. What does this combination of the accounts? What does that? And then obviously the expansion of the reserve account to 9%. What does that do to the tip?
Right. So for history, Mr. Chairman, you're close. The original appropriation to the Hathaway Corpus or endowment fund was $400 million.
We added another.
Then they added another 50 million through Coley's bonus.
Okay.
So the total tips to date has been $130 million. You are absolutely correct. Increasing the cap on the single account from 4.5% to 9% prevents future tips until another 26 or $28 million is retained in the expenditure account.
Okay. Is there an appropriation in this bill?
Mr. Chairman, I'll get to that. That's in the standing committee amendment.
So does anybody have any questions
Yeah.
about what this bill does?
So that's kind of the first big concept. It has nothing to do with the scholarship
Yeah, that
awards or anything
doesn't
like
cover
that.
it.
So it's a pretty complicated change or policy call from the education committee.
All this for timing differences?
No. The timing difference is the simple one. The rest of it is you lengthen out how much is in the reserve to make sure you've already got enough to pay scholarships. And then the next push will be to increase the benefit payment, which is a separate discussion. But it helps enable that because you've got more in this account.
But for now, make sure I got it, that right now, we've got about 1.5 years is what we're getting. And with this change, it takes us to
Probably closer to 3.
3 to 4 years.
Mr. Chairman, if investment earnings were zero, the current reserve account could pay 1.5 years worth of payments.
Right.
If your investment earnings are zero for 3 years, increasing up to the full 9% and allowing $58 million, depending on the 5-year market average, that will allow you to pay off a full 3 years worth of scholarship payments. But that's in the worst case scenario, we have zero investment.
And so, and then that account have to be in pool A, but it won't be in the corpus, which the corpus probably, the average return on the corpus is probably a good percent higher than that, but it's not a humongous amount of money either. But over time it adds up. But anyway, so what else?
All right, so Mr. Chairman, 2 other big appropriation related items with this bill. The first is the Joint Education Committee provided for a 5.7% increase in scholarship payments. That accounts for about an $850,000 annual increase in payments. The Standing Committee amendment from the Senate Education Committee changes that 5.7% increase to 20%.
Yeah, I didn't know it was, I was expecting the 5%. I wasn't expecting the 20%.
Now, I'm not.
It's good work if you can get it.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I'm not taking a position but from the conversations and what I believe the intent there is the value of the honor scholarship. It used to pay about 92% on the initial year in 2006-07 at the University of Wyoming for tuition and fees. Today, it pays about 52-54%, so around there. So the thought behind the amendment to 20% was to take about half of the lost value of what the honors scholarship paid at the inception of the program. So that increases the cost of rather than $850,000 per year.
So what's that make the totals? I know it depends how many people apply or qualify for the scholarship. What's that do to the total spend per year? To give us what it has been kind of average and then what this would take it to.
So, Mr. Chairman, the average scholarship awards per year under current law is about $17.5 to $18 million per year. The 20% increase increases that about $3.2, $3.5 million per year.
It's about 20. So
it's about 20 million per year.
Okay.
So to account for that, for the next 4 years of potential costs to pay for if investment earnings under the current yield projections, to account for that additional 20% increase, the Senate Education Committee also appropriated from the LSRA $14 million to the expenditure account.
This is exactly how Fire A started.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much Elizabeth appropriation?
14 million.
To
So
which account?
to the expenditure account.
Okay.
And so that does two things. One, it gets you closer to the 9%. So it fills that up in the event that your investment earnings exceed the yield projections. It'll just move you up closer to the 9% cap. The other amendment kind of related to this was they prevented any tips from the reserve account for fiscal year 22 to go into the corpus because this bill's effective July 1 of 2022. No tips would occur in fiscal year 2022.
Okay.
So those are the kind of appropriation committee kind of highlights of this bill.
What's the appropriation? Is that the 14 million?
That's the 14 million.
Okay. All right. No worse. And this is a re-referral.
Yeah.
Any questions for Matt about this? All right. All right, committee, is there anybody to testify in this re-referral anywhere? Nobody in the room, nobody in, right. Committee, what's your pleasure? Okay, I'll second. Bill's moved and seconded. Is there any amendments?
I'm gonna strip the 14 million.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Senator Hicks is excused
Question.
from that vote. Question on the bill?
Yes, sir. On House Bill 29 as amended, Senator Guru,
Aye.
Senator Hicks, you said excused. Senator Kinski,
Aye.
Senator Perkins,
Aye.
pardon me, Senator Steinmetz. No, Chairman Perkins. You said aye.
No.
3 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
No.
Kinski, aye to no.
Kinski, aye to no. Perkins, no.
Perkins, no.
As revised, 1 aye, 3 no, 1 excused.
So can you do me a favor? Can you draft a committee of the whole amendment? So Matt, well, if you cut the 20 to 10, I mean, this is the problem. I mean, I don't reject necessarily that this needs to increase. The problem I've always had is to chase your tail. As soon as you increase this, the community colleges and universities will increase their tuition. So I don't, we chase our tail, but at the other hand, these are, it'll help for a year or two until they do that. But if you cut that in half, what does it do? If they got a 10% increase, what does that do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's about a $1.6 million increase per year.
So
And
that puts you about what your earnings have been, puts you relatively close to what your earnings have been.
Yeah.
So your guarantee amount then is fairly nominal still. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay.
The guarantee amount would range from about $1.5 million to about $1 million.
Right. And if you cut off the tips, you'll never, that just makes it all harder for this thing. So anyway, if you just do an amendment to 10.
Mr. Chairman, we'll get that. The other thing is if you want to continue the tips, the 4.5% to 9% is the policy decision there too.
So I'm sorry,
The 4.5% cap and the 9% cap. The bill as drafted has 9%. So it has room to build another $26 million or retain that and not tip into the corpus. I'm not trying to dissuade you anyway to draft an amendment.
So essentially that's a 100% increase in the reserve.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's
so
correct.
if you took, so with a 10% increase, how much of an increase you need in the reserve to cover, to give you a couple of years coverage in the reserve account, which will now be just the expense account?
Mr. Chairman, based on current yield projections, which is 2.3% to 2.7%, it's only estimated you're going to have to transfer about $1 million to $500,000. With a 10% increase, $1.5 million to $1 million per year. Right now, the balance of that reserve account is $26 million. So you have sufficient funds.
If there was zero income, you're good for, you can cover the next year.
Mr. Chairman, you can cover the next year and in half of the following year. But that assumes you have zero income, which I think is a little bit unrealistic.
Well, inflation's gonna help that number. It's gonna make the 10% go. Be a nothing burger pretty quick, but better than have 10% more than 20% less and with inflation. But I mean, but it is gonna make the yields go up. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just for my edification, if we're collapsing the reserve account and the expenditure account. So, but I still hear you talking about tips, albeit at a higher level. So it's really, we're just spending out of the reserve account's not going away because that's what tips is the reserve. They're just.
Yeah. So I'm just, brings you back to the whole thing. So right now, how much has to be in the reserve account before it tips? To 26?
Mr. Chairman, it's 26, but it increases a little bit each year because it's based on the 5-year market average. Last year,
Assuming the amount goes up.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. The last year, fiscal year 21, $13 million tipped. So we're at the cap already.
Yeah. So they're trying to prevent the tip.
Mr. Chairman, so this bill, as the Standing Committee amendment, prevents a tip for anything for fiscal year 22 if it were to occur.
So does that affect how does that affect the profile?
Mr. Chairman, this account is not profiled.
It's not profiled.
These accounts are part of just the Hathaway Scholarship endowment and reserve accounts. And Senator Kinski, to your point, the combination of the accounts will act like they do currently. The expenditure account will now be the account that would tip to the corpus. Right now it's the reserve account, but the 4.5% is now slated onto the expenditure account.
Got zeroed out anyway.
Correct.
So it's kind of
Just
here and
spending
there.
out of the reserve account effect.
Yeah. So it's still the reserve. It is the reserve account. It was just that part is just simplification. So that's the reserve account goes up. It cures the timing issue. So the rest of it's just about tips and.
One part of the bill worth keeping.
Yeah, we can work it. So anyway, so I think what I would like is amendments to keep the tip the same. And then like say, just as a placeholder for right now, to change the increase to 10%.
And Mr. Chairman, would you want to then eliminate also the prevention of any tips for fiscal year 22?
Yes, I do want that to go away.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I understand the amendment correct, it's going to be a 10% increase rather than 20%. The cap on the expenditure account will come down from 9% to 4.5%, which is current law.
Right.
And then the prevention of the fiscal year 22 tips would be taken out.
Right. And
okay.
And just confirm this for me if you can, Matt, or tell me it's wrong if it is. That with the 10%, I think roughly it doesn't really change the anticipated. It's still a year and a half. You still roughly have a year and a half with the 4.5% in the account.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And again, that's on the scenario where you have zero investment earnings.
Yeah. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
If anybody else wants to be on those amendments, let me know.
Well, I'd like to be on the amendments, and I'd also like to know, you want to leave the reserve account doubled to 9%?
No, but that's one of the amendments is to take it back.
Okay, all right. And then Matt, what's the current balance in the corpus?
Mr. Chairman, as of July 1 of 2021, it was 684 million, I believe.
Okay, I'm missing something because of what I had.
Correct
my math.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's closer to 7, but again, it fluctuates based upon the market value.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I thought you said there was initial funding of 400 million, then we appropriated another 50 million, and then I thought you said 130 million came from tips.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kinski, that's correct. But recall, this is the market value, not the cash value of the corpus. So in cash terms, initial 400 million from FMRs, 50 million from COLI's bonuses, and then 130 million from tips.
Tips, and that's for the corpus value, not the market value.
Yeah. 130 million is a lot of money.
With that's the only way that account's growing. There has never been any additional appropriations to it. Yes, Mr. Vice President. Oh, and by the way, we're